Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience. If we can just take a seat, we'll get started. We adjusted the clocks a little bit to Delhi time from 9 to give everybody the chance to get here in time. So welcome again to the last day of the conference, Automotive Logistics to India 2014. For those of you who might not have been here yesterday, again, I'm Christopher Ludwig, the editor of the Automotive Logistics Group, working together with Louis Yakumi and with Nimish to put this conference together and our magazines about sort of a new look this year and why I look so different. And actually, it's just to distinguish myself from Louis, because people mistake us all the time, and just try to make it a little bit easier for all of you. I hope you all enjoyed, those of you who were here, I hope you all enjoyed yesterday and enjoyed the great gala dinner we had at the Westin. I'll review a couple of things from the event, but maybe just, as usual, a few little housekeeping notes as we kick off here. First of all, there are feedback forms on your desk. They'll be here all day. If you can fill them in at some point, hand them, either leave them there, we'll collect them, or hand them into a member of our team. And at the end of the conference, we'll do a draw for a prize. And as I said yesterday, we really take those that feedback very seriously. So please take the time to fill it in. I believe also on your desk there's a questionnaire, or there has been since yesterday, from DHL. If you could also fill in that questionnaire and return it to the booth. Outside, there's another prize draw there as well. So on that side, and once again, this conference is being streamed live globally, actually, and will also be accessible afterwards to our global audience. The people in the room, the people in the room can also log into this function. You can comment, you can put questions to the panel, which I can feed back, or you can communicate amongst yourselves. Again, as we've said a few times, and I think there's instructions in your program, the way that you log in is via the website. You can click the tab for live, and you'll need your email address and your delegate number, which is printed on your badge. So you have everything you need right there. It's quite a interesting tool to, like I said, to kind of participate virtually as well as interactively, and we do get some feedback from people around the world. Obviously, the timing doesn't work so great for Europe right now, but again, we expect our global audience to tune in later on. Other points on the day after this session, we'll have split streams. We'll have one session looking at finished vehicle. We'll have another session looking at spare part logistics. And then after lunch, we'll actually be back in here for a round table discussion when we'll split into smaller groups, and you'll have a chance to focus in on dedicated subject matters. They'll be printed outside. There's a moderator for each session, each table to lead the discussion. And it's, like I said, it's a chance to kind of talk a little bit offline, if you like, about topics more specific to your business. And we'll be all back in one room again at the end for a OEM discussion panel. Okay, so I thought yesterday got us off to a really interesting start. Just maybe a few highlights from my side. We heard that India does appear to be heading back towards growth in the automotive industry. I think the expectation from IHS was 8 to 10% growth, hopefully next year, and then picking up after that, looking again in sort of closer to double-digit annual growth through the rest of the decade, with expectation that passenger vehicle sales could reach 6-7 million by the end of the decade. So it might not be what was once expected, but we are hopefully heading out of the stagnation of the past few years. We heard yesterday, again, obviously logistics challenges that are familiar to all of you. I don't think we have to go through them all, but a few that kind of stood out. I thought it was interesting that Ford pointed out, Nigel Harris, president of Indian Ford, who's had a lot of experience in China, that their logistics costs in India 30% higher relative to China. Obviously, I imagine that's relative per unit or as such, but in a competitive terms, this is obviously a disadvantage and something that Ford obviously wants to address, and indeed is addressing. Amlan Bose had some very interesting presentation about some of the initiatives there, moving to LLP, looking to do a lot more optimization, looking to rail. And indeed, Ford was just one example. We heard, obviously, about supply chain optimization at Maruti Suzuki, at Mahindra Mahindra, about tier suppliers, and indeed from logistics providers. There's a great buzz around rail, something we're going to obviously be talking about a lot in this session. So I think, we did hear about things happening. We also heard from the road transport ministry yesterday about a draft bill which could really change some of the landscape for road safety, and also integrate it together with the multimodal logistics planning in a way that could be quite new and quite interesting for the country. So again, lots of interesting stuff coming out, and maybe perhaps most interesting at all, we heard from Lou Yakumi at the end of the day that he's, I think, already in production for an automotive logistics Bollywood performance. So more news on that too as we go along. But now finally to the session at hand, we're coming on talking about India's infrastructure. Again, I don't think we need to go spend a lot of time where there are gaps and where there are issues, but a lot of stuff is happening. We talk about $1 trillion of investment in the current 5-year plan, a lot of private sector funding, and a lot of interest there. Obviously, one of the most important aspects of that, which did come up yesterday, is the plans for the dedicated freight corridor, which could really change things on the rail side, but also across the inbound and outbound chain. And that's why we're very pleased to have, as one of our presenters this morning, H.D. Gujrati, who's the Director of Operations for the Dedicated Freight Corridor Corporation of India Limited, which is effectively an incorporation from the Ministry of Railways. And H.D. will be taking us through updates on the project, on its scope, and perhaps some about the timeline as well. We're also pleased to have Rajiv Bajaj, the partner at Nomura Research Institute, veteran of the automotive and supply chain industry, and also on the consulting side, who will be able to give us a perspective on the infrastructure developments in India from an automotive point of view. So we'll have a presentation from both our panelists. We'll have time for Q&A and hopefully some good discussion. So I'd now like to invite Mr. Gujrati to the stage.
Good morning. Welcome to the first session of the day in the beautiful weather of Delhi. I was discussing to some of the people, normally the conference starts here in Delhi and India probably after 9:30, because for here the people, winter has already started. 9 was slightly earlier. That may be one of the reasons I find some of the seats vacant here. Mr. Christopher Lumding, Mr. Rajiv Bajaj, distinguished delegates. First of all, I'm thankful to Automobile Logistics for inviting me for this particular session to talk about one of the most iconic project and most ambitious project ever taken by the Government of India, Ministry of Railway, on infrastructure side. So far, the share of the automobile sector in railways transportation is very, very low. We are close to about less than 2%. Predominant movement of the automobiles takes place by road in the country. Then sharing the thoughts about the DFC, how it's going to change the logistics scenario, particularly the lighter segment, including the automobile. It is very, very important for me, and is important for the DFC as well as for the industries also. What I'm going to talk about is how the DFC was conceived in a very, very nutshell, so that the people who have come from the global area, they could understand what was the concept behind the dedicated freight corridor, what are the distinguished feature of the dedicated freight corridor which is likely to change the logistics scenario for the freight in the country, including the lighter segment, And lastly, I'm going to talk about what are the participative model which the Ministry of Railway has unveiled to attract the investment. The opening of the FDI in the railway sector has been a very, very key decision of the Government of India recently. We are already late, and I will not take much of time on starting the presentation. This is the first slide which talks about how the growth in traffic has taken place on Indian Railway. If you look at, in first 50 years, the growth has been close to about 400 million ton. This is in million ton. And thereafter, 2001 to 2013-14, if you look at, the growth has been a steep growth, because at that time, the growth in the economy, Indian economy has been a very, very good, particularly between 2003 to 2008. Global slowdown in economy affected India also, and in turn, the railways. There is a direct correlation between the GDP and transport requirement of through railways. And for railways is coming close to about 0.9. Elasticity between the GDP and transport, rail transport in the country is about 0.9. The government is planning to go accelerate the GDP growth. This has become a big challenge. Infrastructure is a problem that needs to be updated on a very, very war footing if we want to sustain the economic growth in the country. Now, this is a diagram, most of you must have seen it. It depicts the golden quadrilateral of Indian Railway. It connects the four metro, Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai and Calcutta. Lengthwise, route kilometer is only 16%, but it carries more than 55%, 52% of the passenger and 58% of the freight traffic. Is a massive. And in India, unlike many other countries, the corridor is a mixed corridor where we run the both passenger and freight on the same corridor. Preference is to the passenger traffic, and therefore the freight has a detention en route, transit time gets affected, and it impacts the supply chain management, particularly for the cargoes which are lighter and where the high value cargo. The automobile sector comes in this sector, in this segment, where you want the supply chain management has to be ensured. Here there is a problem with the railways. Now, with anticipated growth in the GDP, government thought over this sector, congested sector of the Indian Railway won't be in a position to meet the traffic requirement for the country. And is there any pointer in this? This working. Now I'll have to go that side or? Yeah. Yeah. I have to use the mic also. Okay. This sector from Delhi to Calcutta, this sector, this is predominant in the coal and steel in the country. Most of the steel gets produced in the eastern part of the country because of the availability of the iron ore, closeness with the port, and availability of the coal around. This segment of country handles the predominant container traffic. Close to 65% of the container traffic is being handled on the western port of the country. And most of the consumption segment for container as well as the coal, they are close to Delhi and NCR region. So now this movement has become very important for growth in the GDP and growth in the industries also. Considering the congestion on this route, the government decided way back in 2005 to create an SPV who can undertake the work for creation of the dedicated freight structure so that we can add on values to the services which we will be providing to the customer. And with this concept, Dedicated Freight Corridor Corporation of India Limited was formed. It is a company under the Company Act. It is a public sector entities working under the Ministry of Railways. 100% stake in this company is with the Ministry of Railway, the Government of India. In first phase, the government decided let's construct two corridors. One is from Ludhiana going up to, from Ludhiana going up to Calcutta. That is the Dankuni is close to Calcutta for carriage of the coal and steel. Second corridor which is from Jawaharlal Nehru Port Trust. Here about 40% of the container traffic is being handled within the country. And then movement towards coming in the NCR region close to Dadri. The length of this corridor is about 1499 and length of this corridor is 1839. Now they have been divided in different segments. EDFC 1, EDFC 2, EDFC 3 and railway funded and a PPP. The funding arrangement has been planned for Eastern Corridor with the help of the World Bank and Western Corridor predominantly with the help of JICA. Are you able to hear me? Yeah. This diagram depicts the further details of the Western Corridor. I am taking Western Corridor particularly because a lot of industries, auto industries, they are coming on the western side of the country and southern side. Since we are not going in the southern side at the moment, I am concentrating on the western side only. You have got a Maruti close to Rewari and you have got Maruti plant close to Ahmedabad. Then there are the Ford and other companies coming up. Now this corridor will be meeting the requirement of the auto industries and a container. As I mentioned, this corridor has been predominantly dealing with the container traffic originating from the Western Corridor. The concept here has been, you construct a express highway and connect through the feeder route here. Connect through the feeder route here, and the traffic which is originating from various feeder route that can come and take on to the expressway and then move along and will reach to the various distance on a longer distance. Now feeder route on the Western Corridor is connecting to various ports. One is the Pipavav, Kandla, Mundra, then Mumbai port. Then we are going to Thal, Hazira and Panvel, where Dighi port and Jaigarh port traffic will come and join, and Bharuch and Dahej. So these feeder route upgradation will be done by the respective entity or Indian Railway as the ownership belongs to them. Now this particular slide is very important for the logistics player. Thus, this shows the difference between the Indian Railway designing aspect and the designing aspect of the DFC. On Indian Railway, the height which we permit is today is a 4.265 meter. Whereas on the Western DFC, we are going for a double stack container train and height of the wagon rail car can go up to 7.1 meter. This is a huge. And on Eastern Corridor, as I mentioned, it will be predominantly moving the coal and steel traffic. Here the height has been comparatively kept lower. It is 5.1 meter just to transport the bulk cargo. On a western, as far as the width is concerned, here also we have increased from 3.2 meter to 3.660 meter. Here our effort is to further relax it and make it something close to about 4 meter. Our intention to go for 4 meter is based on the concept because most of the sedan car in the economy sector, they are close to about 4 meter. If we could create an infrastructure where I can permit a width of 4 meter in the rail car, so instead of loading along the length, we can plan loading along the width. The capacity per rail car, transportation capacity per rail car increases significantly. Today we are in a position to transport about 5 cars in a rail car in a double stack configuration. Once we come with this infrastructure and we are able to load the car in the along the width, this transportation capacity can be increased from 15 to 20 car rail car per 15 to 20 vehicle per rail car. There is a huge increase in the transportation capacity per rail car. That's the biggest advantage which this system is going to give, particularly to automobile sector. As I mentioned, this western corridor will be in a position to permit double stack. We can increase the length of the train also. On Indian Railway, we run a train of maximum length of something about 700 meter. But on DFC, we can go from the day one for a length of something 1.5 kilometer. And since it is a freight only line, we can increase in a multiple of this unit, 1500 multiplied by 1 or 2 or 3, and then we can carry on into the system. Axle load, this determines how much we can carry per rail car. Existing on Indian Railway, we can carry 91.6 ton, that is the total gross which is permitted per rail car. Here we are going for initial, which can be further increased to 130 tons per rail car. This is a massive difference. Then maximum speed on the Indian Railway is a 75 kilometer, barring few stock. On DFC, we are going for 100 kilometer per hour. But if you see the average speed on Indian Railway is close to about 27 kilometer per hour on the basic trunk road. On DFC, we are aiming up to go of average speed of about 70 kilometer per hour. That means from here to Mumbai or here to Mundra and Pipavav, we will be able to cover the distance in less than a day. This gives a very big edge to our transport system in comparison to any surface transport mode. Like roadways cannot take they cannot compare this transit time which we are aiming at. To increase in the volumetric capacity and then speed and then axle load or tonnage which we are carrying per rail car, this gives a very, very distinct advantage to DFC when the system is commissioned. Now, this project is close to about $16 billion. And the government mandate given to us is debt equity will be 2:1. Loan we are taking from the World Bank for the Eastern Corridor, which is about $2.725 billion. And from JICA, it is close to about $6.5 billion. Loan with the JICA has been completely tied up. With the World Bank, we are going to sign the second tranche. That will increase to the total guaranteed loan of $2.075 billion. And the last tranche probably we will be signing by June. The loan is completely tied up as far as the construction of this particular corridor is concerned. Now, the mandate which is available to DFC is DFC will be managing the train operation, infrastructure maintenance on DFC. We will have our own station and control center, rolling stock ownership and its maintenance by IR, and whenever the Indian Railway Government of India permits other private operator to operate the train, they will also be given a non-discriminatory access to the infrastructure. Feeder routes siding to be upgraded by Indian Railway, and one more thing which we are going to do which is different from the Indian Railway, there won't be any level crossing gate. There will be grade separator. In addition to the safety to the road user and rail user is going to increase the speed, average speed of the train running both on Indian Railway as well as on the DFC. Marketing and development of the terminal jointly by Indian Railway and a DFCCIL. Now I call it a game changer in the transport logistics. Is a faster, as I mentioned, the average speed is very high, is a higher, volumetric capacity is much higher, and is a longer, I can run a longer train. Average speed of the freight train goes up, volume capacity per wagon goes up, throughput per train goes up, and it unveils quantum jump in the transportation capacity. The initial capacity which we are envisaging, it will be 120 train each way to start with, which can be increased in the form of running a long haul. I can go for a 240 or 360 train depending upon the requirement of the transport need. Then scheduled timetable train and supply chain management. This is again distinguished feature here in the DFC, because on Indian Railway there is no timetable movement for the freight services. And is the passenger train which are timetable today. This system is going to give a scheduled timetable train running on the DFC, running on the system. And once we are adhering to this system, probably the logistic player, they will be in a position to maintain their supply chain management in a better manner. Then induction of modern technology in maintenance, and there will be low operating cost. Where our staff requirement is 1/4 of what is available on the Indian Railway. We will reduce significantly. Since there is no crossing, no precedence, my energy consumption will be much lesser in comparison to what is happening on the Indian Railway. We expect our operating and maintenance costs will be close to about 50% of what is available on Indian Railway. So that gives a big advantage in reducing the cost of the operation and maintenance. In addition to the normal physical changes, it helps in the preservation of the environment. A lot of carbon footprint can be credited. This is the study which was done by the Ernst & Young, which says over the 30 years period, DFC will be saving 457 million tons of the carbon dioxide emission in the country. In addition to the congestion, which can be stopped by transferring a sizable volume from road to rail system. These are the certain other advantages. Another development which has taken place with the plan of DFC has been a development of the industrial corridor along the corridor, DFC. Government thought if we are going to create such a big infrastructure, let's try and develop the industrial township. And with that concept, Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor has been set up. They are planning the industrial township and investment hubs. They have already identified close to 12 locations where they are going to work. Similar thing is going to happen on the eastern corridor from Amritsar going up to Calcutta. In the process, what will happen, there will be regional development where industries will be set up and state government will facilitate for development of the industry in the region. Now, this is the project update. As I mentioned, for any project, what you need is the fund. Fund is close, everything is nearly tied up. Second important issue is the land availability. In this country, we have already done more than 82% of the land acquisition. Wildlife clearance and forest clearance has been obtained. We have given a contract of more than 1100 kilometers where the civil work has already started. If you are moving towards Kanpur, you will find a lot of work, earthwork is going on along the track. If you are moving from Rewari to Palanpur towards Ahmedabad, you will find a lot of works has started. Tender for civil contract for about 1250 kilometers is already invited, and we intend to finalize this by June next year, 2015. Now, in addition to these two corridors, government decided let's go and have a study for another 4 corridors, which are the part of the Golden Quadrilateral, connecting Calcutta-Mumbai. This is east-west corridor of a length of about 2000 kilometers. North-south corridor connecting Delhi-Chennai of kilometer 2173 kilometer. And east coast corridor connecting Kharagpur-Vijayawada is 1100 kilometer, and southern corridor from Chennai to Goa is 890 kilometer. Preliminary engineering and traffic study is on. We have already completed for Calcutta-Mumbai and Delhi-Chennai. And for next 2, we are expecting by June next year, we will complete the preliminary engineering and technical study. And ultimately, when these all corridor comes, this will be the network from Ludhiana to going to Calcutta, from Dadri going up to Mumbai, from close to Delhi going up to Chennai, and from Kharagpur close to Calcutta going up to Vijayawada, and from Calcutta to Mumbai and Chennai to Goa. Basically, we are connecting all major industries, port and other mines area for transportation of the traffic. There are a few slides which talks about how the participation, private participation has been permitted by the Ministry of Railways. In 2012, Ministry of Railway came up with the 5 model for the private participation in construction of the infrastructure in the country. 3 models harness the interest of the strategic investor to implement the project, and 2 models are amenable to the competitive bidding. I will quickly go through it. There is a non-government railway private line model. Here, port, large mines, or cluster of industries which are handling consignment for multiple users can build, maintain line on a private line on a common user facilities. Is basically the people who are using the multiple user. Pure private funding, including land, will be arranged by him. Train operation for IR. Railway recovers cost of the operation. There is some modification in this particular para with the declaration of the FDI, where now the operation can be given to the individual party. Traffic and revenue risk with the infrastructure provider. An infrastructure provider will get a user fee equivalent to 95% of the opposition traffic revenue for the line net of the cost operation. Is something like is the Indian Railway. This connectivity, this is a multi-user facility. This connectivity can be done by the private person. Second model is a capacity augmentation with the customer funding. The construction of a double line, third line, fourth line through funding by the major customer who wants such project in full or part. Basically, it involves the people who are in the coal production, who are in the mining, and who are in the steel segment. Depending upon their growth in the traffic, they can come out with the proposal for construction of the small segment on a PPP route, and on which IR to return 7% of the amount invested through freight rebate every year till full amount is recovered with the interest rate equal to the dividend rate paid to the Government of India on budgetary support. This is the network which will come up. This is the Indian Railway. These are the industries. And then the line will be constructed and rebate will be given by the Indian Railway. Third is the joint venture model. Bankable new line and gauge conversion project, which are by the strategic partner, state government, port, mines, and industries, to be implemented by the formation of JV with railway taking directly or indirectly a minimum 26% of the equity here. Construction and funding to be done by the JV, maintenance in case of the passenger traffic and operation, revenue collection, tariff fixation to be done by the Indian Railway. Normal concession period is 30 years. And this will be reviewed after 25 years for upward or downward revision of the concession based on the materialization of the traffic projection to mitigate the risk of the person who has invested the money. User fee to JV by apportionment of the traffic revenue, and land is acquired by the railways as the SPP cost and ownership remains with the railway. This is the third model which we are working. This model is important for the DFC, where we are working at the moment. For sanction project where the stakeholder cannot be identified, generally for the freight-oriented line, award of the concession through the competitive bidding process. A concessionaire will design, build, finance, and maintain. Operation will continue with the Indian Railway or their identified entity like DFC. Viability gap funding will be the parameter. Train operation revenue collected by Indian Railway. Concessionaire gets a 50% of the apportioned freight. Here, what they will get. Normal concession period will be for 25 years. Land acquisition and ownership will be done by the railways. And this is annuity model where a fixed amount can be given to the person who has invested, and the bidding parameter will be the annuity quoted by the different parties. And this is 5 model. Ministry of Railway on their website, they have given a detail of the project which they intend to undertake under various participative model, including FDI is permitted there. So you can have a look on this, and people are looking forward for the investment for development of the infrastructure which is necessary for the industry, for the country as a whole. Thank you very much. Sorry, I've taken time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gujrati. As I mentioned right at the beginning, I mean, there is obviously a lot happening, and I think that presentation shows that very clearly. I'm sure that many of you will have further questions, and we will have Q&A. But first, I'd like to invite Rajiv up for his presentation.
Good morning, everybody. Very warm welcome to day 2 or final day at the Automotive Logistics 2014. Also very happy to see that this time the team, the ALI team, decided to do this in Delhi and expand the network. I think I recall attending this conference last 2 years in Pune. So it's refreshing to. I belong to Delhi, so it was nice too. Thank you very much, Christopher. Thank you, Mr. Gujrati, for an excellent presentation. And I also take this opportunity to thank Automotive Logistics team for giving us the opportunity to share a few thoughts and a chance to meet all. I couldn't attend the day yesterday, but I saw a little bit of the streaming when I could get the time. And promise and hope is the theme that I saw reverberating, at least in the first 1 or 2 sessions. And indeed, it is good. We in India sort of, I guess, have been surviving on this, the country of hope, right? A lot of times, I remember Louis started the day by saying that when you're in India, you know you're in India, right? So I'll refer to that in a few slides. So what I'm going to do today is just give you, I have 20 minutes, just give you a kind of 1-minute introduction on what is Nomura Research Institute, what do we do, how do we integrate with automotive and infrastructure. I think clearly there is a need for a holistic approach when we look at automotive and infrastructure. I think 2 very integral parts of our economy and sort of cause and effect each other. Coming from Japan, or our company coming from Japan, I've put together a few slides on what was done in Japan, just a few takeaways in terms of how they use the infrastructure development. And Japan, as you all know, is one of the most fantastic infrastructures, both road and rail. For most of you or some of you who've been there, can vouch for that. Again, I guess I'll take Louis' phrase. When you are in Japan, you know you're in Japan. And clearly, I think the key to success here is collaboration. And I must thank Mr. Gujrati for setting the stage on the DFC project and all the stuff that he talked about in terms of the models that the railway is implementing. Clearly, very, very good news. I believe the new government, which has a great mandate, wants to use railways as a showcase. It's something that touches the heart and soul of every Indian, not just on the logistics side, but even on the passenger side, and to clearly make a difference in that sector. Introducing Nomura Research Institute, we were established in 1965 in Japan as a think tank to the Japanese government. It was also the era when the Japanese progress started, as I'll probably show you. As from a think tank, we moved to a full-fledged research and consulting organization. We're present in about 11 countries, 18 offices, largely dominated in the Asian, Southeast Asia, China, Japan region. In Europe, we have a partner firm called H&Z. And in India, we have a consumer research firm called Market Excel. We operate in all domains, both automotive, industrial goods, supply chain, and infrastructure are core industries that we work in. In India, we were established exactly about 3 years back in November 2011. We have a team of about 25 professional consultants in India. We are headquartered here in Gurgaon, and along with Market Excel, we have penetration for market research in about 10 cities in the country. Coming to the automotive industry, infrastructure, and a need for a holistic approach. I think some of this was touched upon yesterday by Nigel and Vinny from ACMA. But just to once again emphasize, automotive industry is a very, very important engine of both the economic growth and employment in India. Just to give you the numbers once again, it accounts for about 7% of our GDP, almost the same percent of our organized employment. It accounts for 27% of the industrial GDP, about 4% of our exports, so a bit on the lower side there. and about 13% of excise revenues. So you can clearly see the significance that this industry has in terms of government excise revenue, and also the jittery feeling that everybody has about what's going to happen with the excise duties effective January. It's had about $35 billion of investments. On the FDI side, it's on the lower side. It's much more of a long-term industry, about 24 billion by OEMs and about 11 billion by suppliers. Another great aspect of this industry is it touches a very wide range in the ecosystem. One job in automotive creates, the numbers vary between 3 to 5, and some even take it further. But we believe if you look at the whole ecosystem, including the services offered on the financing side, clearly 5 jobs in the ecosystem. The government and SIAM and ACMA together created the Automotive Mission Plan in 2006. It's been almost 8 years to that. It was a kind of a 10-year plan, and we've shown on this slide to you as to what was the base in 2006 of automotive industry. What was the target set to be achieved by 2016, and where we are. One thing good that has started to happen now is that both in terms of our public sector and in terms of government, we're at least openly showing what targets we set out and where we are. As we say, what doesn't get measured doesn't get improved, so at least we're being transparent about it. In 2006, automotive industry accounted for 5% of GDP. We wanted to be about 10%. We're at about 7.5%. The last 2 or 3 years of slowdown, didn't give us the growth that we anticipated. On the employment side, we're fairly there. We are close to around 19 million in employment. We wanted to be at about 24, 25. So the rate of employment is there. I think, the last 3 years of growth have sort of restricted the growth in employment. But on the revenue side, and this also shows the cost competitive nature of this is business, we wanted to be close to 150 billion, 145 billion. We were barely about 91 billion across the whole spectrum of services. But position in the world, we are today 6th in terms of passenger car, as you rightly know. China, USA, Japan, Germany, South Korea, and then us. In terms of trucks and buses all put together, we would be 3rd after China and Japan. Two-wheelers, 2nd after China. Number 1 in tractors, and a leading player in automotive components. I mean, not very large scale when it comes to the globe, but at least through our exports, we're getting reasonably well placed over there. But when you look at infrastructure, we clearly way below in rankings. Whether you look at road, I mean, I don't have to go through these rankings with you. We all know that, and this is where I come to Louis' phrase. I think when you're in India, you know, it's the only place where the roads, and especially here in the north, the roads will be as potchy as you see them. We were doing some analysis, and we were analyzing the slowdown as it was happening. And, was it saturation? Was it lack of growth in the economy? I mean, it's all a mixed bag. And the interest rates and fuel rates were also playing. Inflation was also playing. But we also believe that infrastructure development and our regulatory policy sort of not paralysis, I would say, but slow development were also factors which lead to the bottleneck of growth. Clearly, growth of income levels and rupee movement will trigger the market expansion in India on the automotive side. But we believe infrastructure and regulatory policy also have to move very much in hand. If you clearly look at the road infrastructure in the country in terms of paved and unpaved roads compared to China, where 84% of the roads are paved, India is only 54%. And I'm just using China, same population, sort of large economy, and it's known fact that we are about a 10-year lag in China. But if you look at the expressway side of the paved roads, the percentage of expressways is negligible in our country. Similarly, if you look at interest rates, we are amongst the highest. Only Indonesia is a bit higher than us when it comes to interest rates. And when you look at average speeds, again, we are amongst the lowest. Again, these are all determinants of infrastructure, both physical and financial. If you look at the rail network in China and in India, we're broadly similar in terms of the overall kilometers of rail network that we have. But when you look at the traffic that moves on rail, as Mr. Gujrati also pointed out, in India is much lower than what it is in China on a much larger scale. So clearly a lot of movement has to be shifted to rail. Recently, in the last year or this year, the government, again with Simon ACMA, has restarted the exercise of a new automotive vision. We're talking about the next 10 years now, and we're calling it the Automotive Vision 2026. This is still under development, but the broad vision here is to now look at global and achieve mega scale, and to look at a 5x growth. So from a 60 billion sort of domestic auto and exports, which includes the components, we want to be a 300 billion industry, both for India and to make in India for the world, amongst the top 3 markets, top 3 in manufacturing competitiveness. So a huge, bold vision over here. And also reach from 7.5% of GDP to 13% of GDP. Clearly, this is not possible in isolation. We'll have to look at a holistic approach. I mean, each one of these industries actually aids the economy, but it's the economic development that led to the automotive industry. So roads, railways, ports, and aviation. And recently in February, work was done by the National Transport Development Policy Committee, which came up with a set of very comprehensive recommendations, clearly saying that we'll have to invest in the overall transport sector, both for industry and for agriculture. As Mr. Gujrati pointed out, the Golden Quadrilateral is one of our good achievements. Increased competition in aviation is something that we've done well, but clearly port side, urban transport side, and railways reforms is where we've been lagging behind. I'll rush through. If we have to grow 5x in terms of our automotive industry, we'll have to grow broadly 7x in terms of the entire investment in the transport sector. Clearly, the needs of freight transport, domestic air traffic, all are projected to be in the region of 7 to 8x in times to come. The share right now has reduced a lot, so on the railways, clearly a lot has to be done. In terms of port development, I mean, clearly in India we suffer. This is core to a lot of the participants here. We don't have those mega ports. We don't have a mega port strategy. If we want to grow bigger in global trade, we'll have to have that. A lot of our shipment today gets consolidated in Colombo or Singapore. So clearly there should be a vision to establish 4 to 6 mega ports over the next 2 decades. And also the concept of the mega port needs to be established here in India. On the aviation side, while the marketplace, it sets itself right in terms of free competition, but I think there needs to be a clear master plan on the aviation side, and off-airport facilities, sort of integrated transportation needs to be encouraged over there. One thing that we often ignore as we look at these physical aspects of the infrastructure is the impact that this will have on the environment. Clearly, for the density that we have on the road transportation, that is not sustainable or not recommended from an environment standpoint. So clearly multimodal prioritization, and also we have been behind on the emission controls roadmap due to our, not that the OEMs are not ready. I mean, all of the OEMs are fairly ready with Bharat 4 or Euro 4 sort of designs, as I would call it. But it's the fuel quality and the availability or the investments on the refinery side for low sulfur fuel that are preventing that. But we are pretty much on track with Bharat 4 now. So some sort of a national automobile pollution and fuel authority needs to be in place, which should push that. I will skip a few of the slides, but again, just to give you another important, very important aspect is how all this will impact, how some of the, as this infrastructure gets built, demand for energy 4x, demand for steel probably 8x, and all of this will need to be sort of transported. So clearly railways and our DFC on the side of where the coal mines are is a very important and a very fast track need in our country today. Otherwise, we again going to get stuck like we are stuck right now, as we saw in the last 2 or 3 years, with power plants being there but not being able to fire because of coal and other restrictions on mining. Just very quickly, some learnings from Japan. Japan started this process in the 1970s, and clearly continued to invest in its infrastructure along with its GDP and its automotive growth. It clearly first focused, it was a small country, so it got its act together in terms of production and quality and infrastructure, focused on an export-led growth, and then it became a country which promoted global enterprises. The amount invested in road infrastructure was significant in the initial years. There was always a large budget, almost 12% of the total budget was on the road side. This also went into expressways, pedestrian bridges, and also creation of an entire safety and a light infrastructure in the country to promote safety. 50% of the road investment in until 1985 was clearly earmarked through the tax revenue that was collected on the passenger cars. So the tax revenues that were collected on the cars that were being sold in the country was channelized towards a better infrastructure. So sort of you sold more, you created better infrastructure and created a good framework for that. Also, something not commonly known is that Japan created, we all are very fond of Japanese cars, sort of hassle-free, good fuel economy, good on emissions, etc. But Japan started this even before the rest of the world created an emissions roadmap. Japan, somewhere in the late 70s, created a pressurized emissions roadmap, and an interesting insight and learning of how you set a very strict target because it benefits everybody in the long run. There's also a system in Japan about vehicle inspections, and there is a formal scrap policy. The vehicle inspection we are not pushing that much in our country, but clearly the scrap policy is something that all OEMs want, as it'll reinvigorate sales in the country. So just to clearly bring the Japanese experience here, the taxation on the car, the buildup of the infrastructure, getting efficient growth through exports, creating huge employment, all of this led to a great ecosystem in Japan, a very successful sort of industry in Japan, both automotive and infrastructure. And we hope that plus the holistic approach on ports, aviation, and railways creates the next 2 decades of country prosperity here in India. In terms of things that we are trying to push on the policy side, we're pushing for strict emissions control roadmap, because that will improve both the environment and the upgradation level. The vehicle recall system in India is in place, but we are also trying to push for scrap and abandonment policy. Some of the other things that we can learn from Japan is clearly the technology and quality upgrade, which is what Indian OEMs need to focus now. So my ending point, I think, is collaboration is the keys to success here. We need the government very, very clearly. I think there has been a lot of movement on the railway side in terms of presenting to India now that we are going to focus on modernization in the railways, both on technology in terms of new gauging, etc. So that's very encouraging news. I think the PPP box is still. I was very happy to see the different model that Mr. Gujrati explained, but I think the PPP box still needs to be made more friendly to all the players, or some other multilateral financing models will need to be developed. But clearly, we think that if the last 2 or 3 times when we were meeting, there was an era of what we used to call VUCA in terms of volatility, uncertainty, and ambiguity. I think we're all hoping for, I think there is a vision out there. I think there is good understanding. It's no more that one is talking against the other. I think there is reasonable understanding now as to how things are connected and how we need to work together. I think clarity is still needed. There are a lot of programs, probably, the government is new, the new leadership working with the bureaucracy. I think clarity has to come out and leading to good action. So we hope for a new VUCA over here. We as a research and a consulting organization hope to play a constructive role in this, and look forward to interacting with you during the course of the day. Thank you very much. That was on time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rajiv. Again, very interesting presentation, pulling together all of the pieces that kind of we need to look at to really improve the infrastructure situation in India, and indeed to have any chance at reaching that new target of 5 times growth. As Rajiv mentioned, it probably requires at least 7 times the investment in infrastructure. So it's obviously a lot that needs to happen. We have some time for Q&A. I'm happy now to open up the floor, or indeed the live stream, as I'll check it, if anyone has any questions they'd like to put to either of our panelists. Again, if I can't see you, my staff will help. Okay, I'll kick off. Just the first kind of simple question really to Mr. Gujrati is the kind of timeline for where you see, let's say, the Eastern Corridor being complete and the Western Corridor being complete, and then starting on the next phase. I mean, can you give us some view on that?
We are undertaking the work both on Eastern and Western Corridor simultaneously. We will start commissioning the section from the next year onward. A small segment of 55 kilometer we plan to open by March 2015. Then another 70-80 kilometer we add up by 2016 end. Bigger chunk will start commissioning from 2017. Mid of 2017, we hope we will be adding up about 500 kilometer. Another 500 we will be adding up in the same year. So 1,000 kilometer in 2017. Balance we intend to open in 2018-19, and by 19 we intend both the corridor should be available for the operation. What we have done, we have given a connectivity to the Indian Railway at different location at a distance of about 100-150 kilometer. So wherever the section gets ready, we'll get connected with the Indian Railway, start moving the traffic. 19 is the target for us to open the whole section from Sonnagar to Ludhiana and from Dadri to Jainport.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the floor at this time? I think we have one right in the back.
Umesh Bhanot from APL Logistics Vascor. Question to Mr. Gujrati. Morning, sir. In fact, sir, 2 things. One about the logistics parks. Now we've seen that availability of quality logistics parks and terminals, that has been a drag even for containers, and now I think we have this other policies also coming in, so that has been a drag. Now we heard earlier that mega logistics parks would be developed around the dedicated freight corridor lines. So an elaboration as far as that is concerned. Second, on the commercials, you would be opening this in patches. What about the commercials? I mean, is it going to be merging with the Indian Railways tracks and hence the freight payables, or is there going to be some separate system? I mean, any preliminary thoughts on that?
You rightly pointed out multimodal logistic park are very much necessary if we want to attract the white goods and a lighter segment, because nobody is going to construct the siding. It's very, very difficult. In bulk segment, you can always look forward, the customer will construct his own siding and go ahead. But if we want to gain the market share in the lighter segment where the railway share is very, very low, we need to go for the multimodal logistic park. DMIC and UP government, they are coming up with the mega logistic park close to Dadri. They have already given a plan. Concor has already come up with a small, medium class multimodal logistic park near Rewari, Khatwas. They have come. There is a plan to build up a logistic park close to Sanand, where automobile hub will be there. And we are also eyeing up some area near Mumbai. We are still working on whether we can develop. That is a western corridor where the people are very, very keen in going for. In addition to this, on eastern corridor, the location will be probably is a Kanpur, one close to Allahabad, Banaras, and maybe a Durgapur. But those needs to be formed up, and with the state government and industrial corridor which are coming up, we'll be working and talking to them. That is the status of the today multimodal logistic park. Because a sizable volume we intend to transfer from road to rail in form of RoRo, roll-on, roll-off. So that itself require a good terminal facilities. Then I'm looking for the consolidation and deconsolidation of the cargo so that I can form the big trains. As I mentioned, the train length will be slightly more, is about 1.5 kilometer. If I want to utilize it, therefore the consolidation becomes a big challenge for us. As you rightly pointed out, in the container segment, we have seen the ill effect of proliferation of the terminals. There is a fragmentation of the cargo, multiplicity of the ports, multiplicity of the operator, and multiplicity of the terminal has led to a serious situation where the fragmentation of the cargo started taking place in the rail-bound traffic. And since rail-bound traffic, number of container which we move is a fix. So there is a empty running on both the side. Some operator is running on the empty in the export leg, and few people are running the empty in the import direction. There is no consolidation among the container train operator. The solution definitely lies in the development of multimodal logistic park, and then start working on the hub and spoke concept, which probably will come up with the DFC having the enough capacity to work for. Your second question was related to the tariff which will be charged on this segment. It will be definitely fixed by the Indian Railway, and since there is a proposal to come up with the tariff regulatory authority, and by the time this DFC come, I am hopeful that the regulatory authority will be there. And one point which everybody needs to consider here, we are going into the buyer market from the seller market. Till now, we are in the seller market. Once DFC comes up, the concept completely changed, and we are in the buyer market with the capacity which we are going to create. The immediate challenge will be to fill up this capacity which is being created. So I'm quite hopeful with the given dimension of infrastructure and the services which will be available on the DFC. Transport logistic cost to the industry should come down drastically in the process.
Thank you. Other questions right here on the side?
Good morning. This is a question to Mr. Gujrati. I'm Kishore Sonikram from Vistion. You said that average speed of container is 25 kilometers. Have you compared with the US and the other developed countries? What is their average speed? And the second is, if you increase the speed itself, we'll have 50% or 100% capacity. If it goes to 25 to 50 kilometers average speed, already railway has doubled its capacity. Developing infrastructure, that is, I understand, but is this as a fast process, shortcut to growth? Have you thought on this?
See, I'll give you an example. Suppose there is a highway and you keep on adding the car. What will happen? Initially, the car will move with the maximum speed. Now, as you add more and more car, the congestion will start growing into the system. Now, imagine a scenario, you have got a car which runs at 300 km per hour. You add another car which runs maximum speed is 60 km per hour. If you run this type of system where there is a huge differential in the speed, you cannot increase the speed, overall speed of the system. That's what's happening on the Indian Railway. We run the passenger train with a maximum speed of 130 to 140 km per hour. There's a Rajdhani and Shatabdi. Goods train, normally they run at the speed of about 60, 65. There is a huge gap between the speed of the freight train and the passenger train. Barring container train, which we run 100 km per hour, but not all goods can be run 100 km in loaded condition. Maximum is today 65 km per hour. So this differential in the speed really creates a problem in the whole system in increasing the average speed. And second, which I mentioned, if there is a congestion, what we do, we stop the freight train and give a precedence to the passenger train. Because the passenger train is a timetable and there are the priorities. The suggestion which you made, it is workable when every vehicle running on the system has got the same speed. Then it's possible to create more and more capacity. Capacity increases. Like in a DFC, as I mentioned, I can run 120 trains without any problem. Then I can go for a 240, 360, multiple. Because there is no differential in the speed. But in a mixed corridor, you always face this problem. That's what happens.
What is the average speed of the other developed countries? We are at 25. What is US, Europe? At what speed they operate?
I won't be able to tell you, but as far as our plan is to go for a higher speed where we become a dominant player on the surface transport mode.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll probably be able to get you that information, maybe even from other people in the room, but off the top of my head, I'm not sure of it either. Can I have a question in the back?
Good morning, I'm Captain Naresh Kundlas, WWL. Two questions, one to Mr. Gujrati, two questions to you. Number one is you mentioned about the height of double stack trains, 7.1 meter. The present double stack trains which are running, that is for high cubes, 2 high cubes, that is 5.8 meters. Is this 7.1 meter you are mentioning about the clearance, some other clearance is the same, or 7.1 is the thought process of some other cargoes or some other specially designed wagon which are going to be coming in future? That is number one question. And second one, you mentioned about loading width-wise. How practical is this if we are talking about a car, loading width-wise?
Good question. Like, see, 5.8 meter which you talked about a double stack today, it moves on the diesel territory. The DFC which we are coming up is fully electrified. That's why you save a lot of carbon dioxide emission. And the 7.1 meter clearance we have asked for because of the electrification which is required in the process. And here we will be maximum permitting the double stack high cube container, which is running on the presently on the diesel route on some area from Gurgaon area to Mundra and Gurgaon to Pipavav. But Western DFC will be permitting to everywhere, wherever they go up to Jain Port. That is the first thing. Second question you asked about, what was your second question? Width-wise. Width-wise. See, this concept came in my mind after seeing the loading of the tractor. I don't know whether you have seen the tractor dispatch on Indian Railway. They use the normal BRN wagon, which is being used for the steel. Before coming to this post, I was looking after the steel segment in the Indian Railway. I went to one of the stations close to Delhi, and I found that the people load the tractor along the width. And it is a very interesting thing which came to my mind. Why not introduce the same concept? It is much easier then. You create a ramp. See, it is basically the logistic system provider they need to look into. And I find this is a more convenient system for both loading and unloading than going one after another in a car in a longer train. If you create a ramp, probably it is a much easier option. This is only a concept which came up, and once the loading and unloading could be arranged, I think this should change the concept of the rail movement altogether. People are loading today tractor in that direction only, not along the width. Yeah.
Probably we could invite some of our friends from North America to explain some projects that were done in the 70s about that, but I'll connect you with those perhaps another time after we'll keep the question down.
Probably if this is the concept only for loading width-wise, because yes, tractor industry and car industry a bit different. When we are going with the conventional loading and the loading patterns, how we do it other places in the world. But yes, if this is just the concept, it's fine at this stage, because if it has to be refined, so all the industry players has to be brought into, and before we make this concept towards the reality. So that needs to be done, because just going with the tractor industry and putting it some thoughts for the car industry may be a bit tough to understand.
I will leave it to the logistic player to decide it, but to my concept, if you create the terminal and loading ramps, it should not be that big difficulty into the process. You need to create the fixed infrastructure accordingly, wherever you are developing, and then when the people come with the multimodal logistic park, probably people will start looking for these things.
Okay, we can take one or two more questions if there are there. I have one here that I can see.
Good morning, this is Sanjay Sasane from the Transport Department, Maharashtra. Sir, we have seen the RoRo concept for the railway. whether you can support the railroad project in which the loading will be done in the last mile and the same trolley will be loaded on the rail track, which is under construction at some of the corporates in Pune. Only trolley will be directly coming to the trolley will be drawn by the horse on the road, and then it will be directly loaded to the rail for the further transactions, so that there will not be any moment of exchange of vehicles on the loading track. The goods will be directly moved from the warehouse to the factory or from the factory to warehouse.
See, that is the advantage of the RoRo when I'm talking about. The advantage will be instead of handling at the on the railway wagon, rail car, you can directly take the consignment and unloading will not be involved. There is no damage, no pilferage, and the cost comes down drastically, and your discharge system is much more faster. The concept, yes, if it can go without prime mover, I think you meant that without prime mover we can load this thing. Yes, it can be done. People have done it. It's possible to do it. And recently I saw one of the terminal developer company. They gave some very good presentation to me, which talks about you can move the wagon. Wagon can rotate, say about 20-25 degree. And instead of discharging from side, on a forward direction, you can discharge on the side also. So there are various models. You might be talking about a Kirloskar who has got a road railer and a road runner. There are two concepts which the people are working in the country at the moment. And once their prototype, I think for Kirloskar the model is already cleared, and for other company they are still working on this thing. So these are the various models which can be adopted on the system.
Okay, thank you. Maybe one last question from the floor, if there is one. Maybe getting ready for coffee. Okay, maybe just last question from my side too, Rajiv. In terms of, you mentioned that the government needs to, or India needs to make the PPP model more friendly. So what's holding it back right now? I mean, I mentioned in the beginning that the government wants to encourage more private investment. Are we seeing the private investment at the rate that we need? Is the government matching that? What are the sort of barriers that you see?
Interesting question. I think with the way the plans have been drawn, I think what's coming out very clearly is how much can the government fund based on its own budgetary estimates and its own multilateral funding estimates. Yeah. I think until last year, or probably in the last 2.5, 3 years, things had really reached a significant level of slowdown when it came to investments. I mean, there was still some direct FDI on a private side that was coming for private projects, expansion FDI, etc. But on the infrastructure side, things had reached a new low. So, to be very honest, I don't have the numbers or the solutions, but what we know right now, and even as part of this National Transport Development Policy, it has over the next 2 decades, it's been clearly the simulation has been done as to how much government, how much totally private, and how much PPP. This was around the February-March period. The whole thing is being sort of relooked at by these interministerial groups, etc. I think, like the railways has come out a bit more out, open and even announcing encouragement of FDI in railways or in different aspects of the railways projects. We should be seeing some more friendliness over here. I think as you all are seeing the news and the noise, looking at the metric of making India a better or easier place to do business, and looking at that metric as a source of our competitiveness in times to come, is a clear voice across all aspects of the government now. this is also getting translated to the States, as we all know. So, अच्छे दिन आने चाहिए. The good days should be ahead. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's a good point on which to end this session. I would like to thank our panelists for their presentation and their time. We're going to be splitting. We'll come back more or less on time. Take about half an hour break for coffee. And this room will be finished vehicle logistics, and spare parts logistics will be in the far room down past the toilets. Enjoy your coffee.